about 200 feet up a vertical ridge in a restricted part of the Grand Canyon when I saw it. A cave, not at ground level, not tucked into a trail. Up there, cut into the rock like it didn't belong. I remember just staring at it for a second, trying to make sense of what I was looking at. Then I laughed. "I bet no one's ever been in there," I said. Ellie didn't laugh. The climb had already been worse than we expected. Not technical, just exposed. The kind of climb where you're not using ropes, but you probably should be. Hands on rock the whole time, testing every hold, making sure nothing shifted under your weight. Below us, the canyon dropped away in layers of red and shadow, not straight down, but steep enough that a slip would turn into a fall you wouldn't walk away from. We weren't supposed to be there. There'd been signs at the start of the trail, closures, warnings about rockfall, unstable sections. The usual stuff people ignore. We ignored it. At first, it had felt like nothing, just a quieter route, less people. Then the path narrowed, then it faded, then it became climbing. By the time we reached that ridge, the heat was brutal. Not just sunlight, radiating heat off the rock itself. Every surface felt like it was holding onto it, throwing it back at you. My shirt was soaked through, hands slick against the stone, every breath dry. Ellie was behind me, quieter than usual. "Dan," she said at one point, "we should go back down." I didn't answer, because that's when I saw it. It didn't stand out straight away. That's the strange part. You'd expect something like that, a cave, halfway up a canyon wall, to be obvious. But it wasn't. It was narrow, set back just enough into the rock that from the wrong angle, it disappeared completely. Just another shadow line in the stone. But from where we were, you could see it clearly. A dark opening about 10 feet across, maybe less. Irregular, but not random. The edges looked shaped. Not clean, but not natural either. I shifted my footing, moving slightly higher to get a better angle. "That's not normal," I said. Ellie climbed up beside me, slower, more careful. She followed my line of sight. Then she stopped. "We're not going over there," she said immediately. I didn't respond. I was already working out how to get across. It wasn't far, maybe 15 feet along the ridge, then a short drop onto a narrower ledge that ran straight to the opening. Dangerous, but doable. That's how it always starts. Not impossible, just manageable enough to justify. "I'm just going to look," I said. Ellie shook her head. "No, Dan, seriously, that's not a path. There's a ledge. That's not a ledge. That's a mistake waiting to happen." I smiled at that. I wish I hadn't. The wind shifted. It came up from below the ridge, pushing hot air past us. Then something else with it. I caught it mid-breath and stopped. At first, I thought it was just the heat messing with me. Then it hit again. Stronger this time. Not just dust, not just dry canyon air. Something heavier, thick, rotten, like manure left out in the sun, but older, sharper, mixed with something damp that didn't belong there at all. I pulled my shirt up over my nose without thinking. Ellie noticed straight away. "What? Do you smell that?" She took a breath. Then her face changed. "That's not right," she said. "No. There's nothing up there that should smell like that. No water, no livestock, no reason for anything to be rotting that close to a cliff face. And it was coming from one place. The cave. We stood there for a few seconds without moving, the heat pressing down, the smell drifting in waves, the canyon completely still around us. Even the birds. Gone. I hadn't noticed when they disappeared, but they had. Ellie stepped back slightly. "We're leaving," she said. I didn't move. I couldn't stop looking at the opening, at the way the light just died a few feet inside it, at the way the air coming out of it didn't match anything else around us. "I just want to see what it is," I said. "That's not a good idea." "It's probably nothing." She didn't respond to that, because we both knew it wasn't. Getting across to it was worse than it looked. From where we'd stopped, it seemed simple. A short move along the ridge, then down onto that narrow strip of rock leading to the opening. It wasn't. The ridge tapered more than I expected. What looked flat from a distance wasn't flat at all, just angled enough that your weight wanted to pull you outward if you weren't careful. I went first, one hand on the wall, one foot feeling for the next hold, moving slow enough that every shift mattered. Behind me, Ellie didn't say anything. That was worse than if she had. About halfway across, I made the mistake of looking down. You don't think about it while you're moving, not properly. Your brain keeps it in the background so you can function. But the second you actually look, it hits you. Distance, scale, the way everything drops away in layers until it stops meaning anything. I pulled my eyes back to the rock straight away. "Don't look down," I said. "I wasn't planning on it," Ellie replied. Her voice was tighter now. The smell got stronger the closer we got. Not in a sudden wave, just gradually, like stepping into it instead of it coming to you. Thicker, more present. By the time I reached the ledge in front of the cave, it was impossible to ignore. I had my shirt over my mouth again without even thinking about it. Ellie joined me a few seconds later, breathing through her sleeve. "This is a bad idea," she said. "Yeah," I said. I didn't move away. Up close, the opening looked different. Worse. From the ridge, it had just been a dark shape. Something unusual but distant enough to stay abstract. Standing in front of it, you could see the edges. They weren't clean, but they weren't random either. The rock around the entrance had been worn back slightly, like something had passed through there more than once. Not enough to be obvious, just enough that the surface didn't match the surrounding wall. The top dipped lower than I expected. You couldn't walk straight in. You had to crouch. Ellie shook her head again. "No," she said. "Dan, seriously, this isn't right." I nodded, still not looking at her. "I'll just look inside," I said. "I'm not going in." That was the line I gave myself. Just look. Nothing more. The air coming out of it was cooler, not cold, but wrong. Out there, everything holds heat. The rock, the air, even the shadows. You don't get cool pockets halfway up a canyon wall, but standing in front of that opening, you could feel it, a faint draft brushing past your face, carrying that smell with it. Rotten, damp, old. I crouched down slowly, one hand on the rock, steadying myself as I leaned toward the entrance. The light dropped off fast. Even in full sun, it didn't carry more than a few feet inside. Beyond that, nothing. Just dark. "Don't go in," Ellie said. "I'm not," I said. I leaned a little closer, trying to adjust my eyes, trying to make out anything past that first stretch of shadow. That's when it happened. A sudden rush of movement from inside the cave. Fast, erratic. Something shot out past my face so close I felt the air move with it. I jerked back instinctively, hitting my shoulder against the rock behind me. Ellie shouted, stumbling sideways. Another shape burst out after it, then another. Bats. They came out in a tight cluster, wings hitting the stone as they forced their way into open air. One clipped the edge of the entrance and spiraled off before catching itself. Then they were gone, out into the canyon, just like that. Silence again. I stayed where I was for a second, heart still racing, trying to reset. Ellie grabbed my arm. "That's it, we're done, we're going back." I nodded. I didn't move, because now that the air had shifted, the smell was stronger than ever, and it wasn't just coming out of the cave, it was sitting inside it, thick, trapped, like it had been building there for a long time. I looked back into the opening. This time, I didn't try to use my eyes. I reached back, unclipped the torch from my pack, and flicked it on. The beam cut clean through the first layer of shadow and stopped a few feet in, hitting uneven rock. The floor dipped slightly, the walls closed in, not wide, not deep, at least not from what I could see, but enough space to move into. "I'm just checking," I said. Ellie didn't answer. Her grip tightened slightly on my arm. I lowered myself further, angling the torch inside. The beam swept slowly across the interior. Rock first, then something else. Not a clear shape. Not yet. Just enough of a break in the surface that my brain paused on it. Something that didn't match. Something that wasn't part of the cave. I stopped moving the light, held it there, trying to understand what I was looking at. "Dan," Ellie said quietly. I didn't respond, because in that moment, I realized this wasn't just a cave. I don't remember deciding to go in. One second I was crouched at the entrance, telling myself I was just looking. The next, I was inside. You had to turn sideways to get through properly. The ceiling dropped lower just past the entrance, forcing you to duck as you stepped in. The rock brushed against my shoulder as I moved, rough and close enough that it felt like it was guiding you forward, whether you wanted it to or not. Ellie stayed right behind me, close enough that I could hear her breathing. "Just look and come back out," she said. "Yeah." The temperature dropped almost immediately. Not cold, but enough that it felt wrong after the heat outside. The air was still, heavy, holding that smell in a way that made it hard to ignore. Now we were inside it. Rotten, damp, and something else underneath it. Something metallic. The torch beam cut a narrow path through the dark. The space wasn't big. Maybe 10 feet in from the entrance, widening slightly at the back, but not by much. The walls weren't smooth, but they weren't natural either. That was the first thing that stood out properly. The rock had been worked, not carved clean like a tunnel, but shaped, flattened in places, edges softened in a way that didn't match erosion, sections where the surface looked intentional. I moved the light slowly across the wall, and then I saw the markings. At first glance, they looked like scratches, thin lines cut into the surface, repeating in patterns that didn't make sense straight away. But the longer I held the light there, the clearer it became. They weren't random. Rows of symbols, small, too small really, each one only a few inches tall, cut into the rock in a way that felt deliberate but off. I'd seen photos of Egyptian carvings before. This wasn't that, but it was close enough to make my brain try to connect it. Figures, lines, shapes that looked like they were meant to represent something, just not anything I recognized. "Do you see that?" I said. Ellie stepped in beside me now, closer to the wall. "Yeah." Her voice had dropped. Lower. "Those aren't natural." "No." I swept the torch further along. More of them, covering most of the back wall, some deeper than others, some barely visible unless the light hit them at the right angle, all of them too precise to be random. "This doesn't make sense," Ellie said. I didn't answer, because something else had caught my eye. Lower down, near the base of the wall. At first I thought it was just part of the rock, a raised section, a shadow. But the longer I held the light there, the less it looked like stone. I stepped closer, slowly, not rushing it, just enough to change the angle of the beam, and that's when it became clear it wasn't part of the wall. It was something placed against it, small, wrapped. I felt my stomach drop slightly. Ellie. She didn't respond straight away. Then she saw it. "Oh my God," she said. There were more. As I moved the torch, the beam caught them one by one, lined along the base of the wall. Not buried, not hidden, placed, each one no more than maybe 2 feet long, wrapped in something that had once been tight but had started to break down over time. The material was dry, cracked in places, pulled thin where it had stretched or deteriorated. They weren't laid flat. They were propped, resting back against the rock as if they'd been positioned there deliberately. I crouched slightly, bringing the light lower, trying to understand what I was looking at. "They're too small," Ellie said. I nodded. "Yeah." For a second, my brain tried to make it something normal. Animals. Maybe. But that didn't fit. Not with the wrapping. Not with the way they were arranged. These weren't random remains. They had been put there. I moved the torch closer to the nearest one. The wrapping had split slightly along one side, just enough to expose what was underneath. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Just shapes, shadows, something pale beneath the material. Then it clicked. Fingers. I leaned in slightly, angling the light, trying to get a clearer look without touching anything. There were only 3. Long. Too long. Each one thinner than it should have been, extending further than any human hand would. No sign of where the others should have been. Just 3 elongated fingers, slightly curled, the skin tight against the bone. "Dan," Ellie said quietly. "I see it." I moved the light upward, slowly, carefully. The head shape was wrong. Even through the wrapping, you could see it. The skull extended further back than it should have. Not massively, but enough that it broke the proportions. Not a child. Not anything that made sense. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. The air in the cave felt heavier now, harder to breathe, like the space itself didn't want to be occupied. I pulled the light back slightly, widening the beam, taking in all of them at once. There were 5, all the same size, all positioned the same way, all wrapped, all wrong. Then Ellie said something that made everything worse. "There should be 6. I looked at her. "What?" She pointed to the space between 2 of them. A gap. Same width. Same position. Same slight indentation in the ground where something had clearly been resting before. But now, it was empty. I didn't say anything straight away. I just stared at the gap, trying to convince myself it didn't mean anything, that maybe there had only ever been 5, that the space was just uneven ground, that I was forcing a pattern because everything else already didn't make sense. But it was too clean, too deliberate, the same shallow indentation as the others, the same positioning against the wall. Something had been there, and now it wasn't. "Dan," Ellie said, quieter now. Not questioning, certain. "We need to go." I nodded. This time I meant to move, but I didn't, because something else had changed. It took me a second to realize what it was. Not something I could see, something I could feel. Air, a faint movement of it, so slight I would have missed it if I hadn't been standing still. It brushed past my face again, cooler than the rest of the cave, carrying that same smell with it, but fresher, somehow, not trapped, moving. "Do you feel that?" I said. Ellie didn't answer immediately. Then, "Yeah." I turned the torch slightly, not back toward the entrance, further in. There was more cave. I hadn't noticed it properly before. The beam had been focused on the wall, on the shapes, on everything else. But now, angling the light past the row of bodies, you could see it, a narrow continuation, not wide enough to walk upright, just a low opening in the rock, maybe 3 feet high, sloping slightly downward, easy to miss unless you were looking for it. And from inside that, the air was coming. No, Ellie said immediately, before I even spoke. No, absolutely not. I'm not going in, I said. That part was true, but I stepped closer anyway. The smell was stronger near it, different too, less like something that had been sitting, more like something that had been disturbed. I crouched slightly, lowering the torch toward the opening. The beam didn't reach far, just a few feet in before the darkness swallowed it completely. The walls inside looked tighter, rougher, not shaped the same way as the chamber we were standing in. Dan, Ellie said, sharper now. We're leaving. Then we heard it, a sound from somewhere inside that narrow passage. Not loud, not clear, just enough to register. A faint shift, like something small, scraping lightly against stone. I froze, didn't move the torch, didn't breathe properly, just listened. Nothing. I glanced at Ellie. Her face had changed. She'd heard it too. That wasn't us, she said. No. We stood there for a few seconds, waiting, hoping it was nothing, that it would happen again and we could explain it. Rock settling, debris, anything. It didn't. And somehow that made it worse, because whatever it had been, it had stopped. I slowly pulled back from the opening, not turning my back on it, just easing away. We're going, Ellie said. This time, I didn't argue. I took one last look at the wall, at the small wrapped shapes, at the empty space between them. Then I turned, and the torch slipped. Just for a second. My grip shifted as I stood up too quickly. The beam dropped, swept across the floor, and caught something we hadn't seen before. Marks. Faint, but clear enough when the light hit them. Lines in the dust, dragging marks, leading from the empty space toward the narrow passage. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Ellie saw them too. Dan, she whispered. Don't, I said. Not to her, to myself, because in that moment, it stopped being a question of what had been in there and became a question of where it had gone. Move, Ellie said, and this time, we did. We didn't run, not straight away. The space was too tight for that. One wrong step and you're slipping, hitting the wall, losing your footing completely. So we moved fast, but controlled, back toward the entrance, back toward the light. Neither of us spoke until we were almost out. Then Ellie said it. What do we do about that? I knew exactly what she meant. The cave, the bodies, the gap. I don't know, I said. That's not normal, Dan. I know. We reached the entrance. The light from outside felt wrong now, too bright, too exposed. Ellie stopped just before stepping out. Do we report it? She said. That word sat there for a second. Report. To who? I said. Park rangers. Someone. That's not something you just leave. She wasn't wrong, but neither was the other side of it. We weren't supposed to be here, I said. She didn't reply. I stepped out onto the ledge first, turning to help her up. The heat hit again immediately. Dry, harsh, like stepping into an oven after being somewhere sealed. We went past a closed trail, I continued, climbed onto a ridge that's not even a path. If we tell someone, we have to explain how we found it. Ellie climbed out, steady but quick. That doesn't matter. It does if they start asking questions. We stood there for a second, both looking back at the opening. Now that we were outside, it didn't look like much. just a shadow in the rock. Easy to miss, easy to forget, except we couldn't. There were bodies in there, Ellie said. I know. And one of them, I know. She stopped, looked back at the cave again, then at me. What if someone else finds it? She said. That was the problem, because someone might, eventually, or maybe they already had. I glanced back inside. Just for a second, the darkness swallowed the light again almost immediately. Let's just get down, I said. We'll figure it out after. She didn't like that answer, but she nodded. The climb back was worse, not physically, mentally. Every step felt less certain than before. Every hold needed checking twice. The drop felt bigger now, and the silence, heavier. About halfway across the ridge, Ellie spoke again. We should tell someone. I didn't answer straight away, because I was thinking about the marks, dragging from the empty space into that narrow passage, and something else. If we report it, I said slowly, they're going to go in there. Ellie frowned. Yeah, that's the point. I shook my head slightly. No, I mean properly go in. Lights, equipment, people moving around in that space. She didn't respond. They're going to go further than we did, I said. That landed, for the first time since we'd left the cave. She hesitated. We reached the wider part of the ridge again, both of us stepping onto more solid ground at the same time. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Then Ellie said, I don't like the idea of just leaving it. Neither do I. But I don't like the idea of people going in there either. That was it. That was the problem. We finished the descent in silence, back onto the faint path. Then the closed trail. Then eventually the marked route again, where everything felt normal. Too normal. There were people again, distant voices, footsteps, the sound of wind moving properly through the canyon. We didn't mention the cave to anyone, not that day, not after, and that should have been the end of it. But there's one thing I keep thinking about. Not the bodies, not the cave, the birds, those two that had been circling above us on the way up. I didn't see them again on the way down, not anywhere near that ridge, not anywhere near that part of the canyon, and I don't know why, but that bothers me more than anything else.